Hello, it's Sonia here with The Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today is Wednesday, and that means it's the Stitch of the Week. So every Wednesday I feature a crochet stitch or a crochet stitch pattern, and for today's stitch I will be using an H hook, and I have regular worsted weight yarn or number 4, and you can use whatever hook size you would like or yarn weight that you have. This is going to be not an exact stitch. I'm going to show you how you can create different textures just by working in the front or back loop of basic stitches. So what I mean is I'm going to show you here I have a hat that I made, and so for the hat band here, this is just basic single crochet, but it looks kind of cool. Single crochet has its place. It's actually my least favorite stitch, but it has its place, and I find it to just, I don't enjoy it that much. But anyway, if you work in front or back loops, you can create some really fun, unique textures. So if you're a newer crocheter and you only know, let's say, the single crochet stitch, and you're kind of bored of just, you know, making a single crochet, you can play around with working in front or back loops to create a fun little stitch. Now this is working front and back loops alternating, and I did not turn. So this is just all worked in the round. So I just went around and around and around working front and back loops. So depending on if you're working in the round or if you're working in rows, you know, you will create different textures. So I'm just going to work a chain of, let's say, 8, and we will do some in rows so you can see what I mean. So here I have 8 chains, and I'm just going to pop in single crochet all the way across in my chain, and you can work in your chain however you wish. And I'm going to put, you still have 7 single crochet. So this is my setup row, row 1. So here I have just 7 basic single crochet. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn for row 2. So I'm just going to alternate back and forth going in the front or back loops. So this, if you're not sure what that is, so if you look at the top of your stitch right here, so see, this is the V, see the V, there's one leg of the V, there's the other. So if you're looking at the top, this part of the V that's facing you is the front loop, and the V that's farther away from you is the back loop. So we're still creating basic single crochet stitches, but we're just going to give them a little bit of an interest. So I'm going to work in the front loop and just work a regular single crochet right in that same stitch. The second stitch, I'm going to work in the back loop. And the next one I'm going to work in the front loop. So I love creating different textures with fabric, and you don't have to get super complicated with it all the time. I mean, I love a really great complicated stitch pattern, but sometimes, you know, you just kind of want to just have something really simple and easy. Or if you are a newer crocheter, you know, this is a good way to get your feet wet and not feel frustrated of working in something that's super complicated and hard. So this is row 1. So row 2, I'm going to chain 1 and turn. So my last stitch was a front loop because this is an odd amount of stitches. So if we had an even amount of stitches, it would, my last stitch, let's say I had 6 stitches, my last stitch would be back loops. So I'm going to turn, and I'm going to continue to work front and back loops. So I chained 1 and turned, single crochet in the front loop, single crochet in the back loop. So there is row 3 of front and back loops. So you can see it just gives it a little bit of texture, gives it a little bit of interest, and it's just a basic single crochet stitch. So I will do another row of that. So chain 1 turn. I'm going to continue just working front and back loops, alternating. And this is good practice of, you know, learning where your front loops are, learning where your back loops are, because sometimes projects do, you know, want you to work in front or back loops for whatever reason. You know, the designer probably has something in mind of why you would be working in a particular loop. It might not just be to create some texture. So there you can see it just creates a nice little bit of texture. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and I can show you what it looks like if you just worked the whole row. So let's say we're just going to work a whole row in the front loops. So if you're working it in the front loops, you know, it's not going to look any different. So let's say this, well, I don't have a particular right or wrong side. So when you're working on a front loop, it doesn't look like any different, but I'll show you when you get to the other side. Sorry about that, I had to change my battery there, but as you can see, I just worked everything in the front loop. It doesn't look like, it just looks like regular single crochet stitches. But when you chain 1, turn, then you can see all of those loops that we didn't work in are now exposed. So for this row, we could just work in the back loops and then create some interesting texture with that. So I've chained 1, I've turned, just going to single crochet in the back loop right in that same stitch because we want to have 7 stitches. And this can apply to any stitch. You can do this with double crochet, you can do it with half double crochet, triple crochet. You know, if you just wanted to, let's say, make a blanket all in double crochet, but you're like, it's a little boring. You know, you can mix up, you know, how you work in your loops, and then suddenly you've created something interesting. So we have worked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows, and now we've created something a little bit interesting just working in front and back loops. So if we wanted to make like an actual stitch pattern out of this, since we have 6 rows, we could start our next sequence. So chain 1, turn, and we could go work front and back loops alternating for this next sequence. So this is row 7. So 1, so front loop, back loop, and we did that for 4 rows. So that would be row 1 of our stitch pattern, so we'll chain 1 and turn. So let's do row 2, again working front and back loops. So we'll do that again for row 3, front and back loops. And row 4, front and back loops. So we have our 4 rows of front and back loops. So chain 1 and turn. So now we're going to go row 5, we're going to work front loops only. And then row 6 of our little stitch pattern that we came up with. So you can see that unused loop, and you work in the back loops all across. And we have a little, oh, we have piece of paper stuck in the yarn. Interesting. Okay. Alright, so then that would be row 6 of our stitch pattern. And see, now you see we just created an interesting little stitch pattern just using the basic single crochet stitch and just using front and back loops. So it's, you know, just a simple way of creating something fun but easy at the same time, which I love. So I mean, you could actually make a really cool blanket out of this stitch pattern just using single crochet. You know, if you wanted it to go a little bit faster, you could use, you know, maybe heavier yarn, a little bit larger hook, and you could just, you know, crochet away working your single crochet. Just keep in mind of your little stitch pattern, you know, however you would want to do it. You could even do it like you could have, let's say, chain 1 and turn. You could do 2 stitches. It would have to be an even amount. So I don't have an even amount, but because I have 7 stitches, but you would have to work on your stitch count. So you could do 2 stitches front loops, 2 stitches back loops. So that would be your pattern. So if you wanted to do something like that, so 2 stitches front loops. So your repeating pattern would be a stitch of 4, because you have the 2 stitches front loops, 2 stitches back loops, and I have 7 stitches. That's obviously not a repeating of 4. So you would want to, so then if we chain 1 and turn, I just did a front loop, or actually be front loops, I did a back loop stitch to finish up. But again, that creates a little bit of interest there too as well. So if you would, you know, have a certain stitch pattern, or let's say you would want to do 3 stitches in the front loop and then 3 in the back loop, then that would be a repeating pattern of 6. So if, let's go back to the 4. I hope I'm not confusing you. This is just kind of teaching you how you can make up your own little patterns and how math applies to that. So if we go back to the one of 2 in front loop, 2 in back loop, then that's a stitch pattern of 4. So you would want to make a chain. Let's say you wanted to have 16 stitches, so you would want to make a chain of 17, because you would single crochet in the second chain from your hook and then continue to single crochet across, and you'd have your 16 stitches. So however you'd want to do it, you know, you'd have to come up with a little bit of math, but it's not too difficult. But I hope this just shows you how you can create interesting stitches all by yourself just by working front and back loops. And again, this will apply for any stitch. You know, you could play with, let's say, double crochet if it's your favorite stitch. You know, you could do that, or half double crochet or triple crochet. You know, you could have a lot of fun just using front and back loops, or just single crochet. You know, as I said before, single crochet is not my favorite, but when I see this, like, to me this looks a whole lot more interesting and fun than just a plain old single crochet. So I hope you enjoyed this Stitch of the Week, and I thank you so much for watching.